just a moment's time, including, we've been talking about agents a lot this morning, of course, and goodness knows those conversations will continue, about agents acting with agency, with autonomy, and about some of the controls, some of the guardrails, where we trust, where it's sensible for a human to be in the loop, where the guardrails and controls and measures should be. And our next conversation on stage in a moment is going to be right on the nose of that, governing the agent-to-agent economy. Just while we've got one more bit of furniture to move on, the 4 Years From Now awards, the semi-finals are taking place right now, and later on today we will be announcing the finalists for the four. We'll be announcing them on the stage here this afternoon. We will be announcing the five finalists who will be live pitching on stage here at 5 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon for the big 4 Years From Now 2026 award. Live pitching, fireworks, big checks. We've got all of the cliches of the award ceremony here, but of course what's really important is the fact that they get to pitch, share their story in front of investors, but also in front of our audience, and it creates a platform. Goodness knows the previous winners of the 4 Years From Now awards have gone on to do some amazing things. So if you are here on Wednesday, please do come along and support what will hopefully be the next big startup to come from the 4 Years From Now platform. Meanwhile, I think the stage is cleared, so let's continue with our conversations. And as I mentioned a moment ago, agents, controls, guardrails around them. And our next guest on stage, who is the founder and CEO at Alinea, is going to be talking about governing the agent-to-agent economy. Please put your hands together for Ariadna Font.
Hi everyone, thanks for sticking around and great to see you all. To follow up on what we heard the panel talk about, I actually want to focus on the governing agents part, and some of the questions actually started to raise these sort of concerns. I will focus a very technical and applied approach for what are failure modes for agents, and then what could be a governance framework that we could apply. So trying to give you very practical tips today. I want to start by saying, and I think everything we heard before already pointed to this, right? As Dario Amodei from Anthropic says, we are at a very historical moment. It's a period of unparalleled power, but also uncertainty. And thinking back in history, I feel like there is maybe a couple similar situations. Maybe when we invented fire, it seems like a very significant step that changed kind of a before and after. When we invented the press, or maybe internet even, right? So this does feel like something is cooking and it is going to change the world forever, whether we like it or not. So I thought I would begin with some questions for you, and I'm going to have to see if I see. What I want you to do is I'll provide some agentic scenarios, and I want to know, with a raise of hands, who thinks this is already true today? So I'll just show you. Let's start with the first one. Right now, companies are leveraging agents in supply chains to optimize logistics, negotiate with vendors, render supplies, reorder supplies, and adjust routes. So all of this is done autonomously. Who thinks that's already a reality today? Raise your hands. OK, a few people. OK, well, it turns out this is already here. This is already happening. Second, let's give you more chances. Agent autonomy autonomously plans and books your next vacation. Everybody's dream, right? You don't have to do anything. You just ask it to do it. It goes to the internet, finds the itinerary, books flights for you, fills out forms, finds hotels, maybe even activities. Who thinks that's already possible today? Raise your hand. OK, more people. Yes, you're right. Like, that is, in fact, already here, and it's working quite well. It didn't used to work so well maybe a year ago, but it's working today. Now I'll go to a few darker examples. So an agent deleted a live production database, erasing records for over 1,200 companies, and then actually covered its tracks and fabricated some reports falsifying the data so that, just to make sure that it didn't do that. And then when asked about it, it pretended to panic. So who thinks that's science fiction, and who thinks that's actually happened? Okay, good, yeah. So you got it. This last summer, these actually happened. And it's pretty crazy when you think about it. Like, I don't know what's craziest, the first part or the second part, but it is getting out there. Now, an agent designed to sort through the emails, everybody's dream, again, at least my dream, deletes every message that's over a week old without being told, so decides that that's the right path. Who thinks that actually happened? Raise your hands. Okay, this happened last week. And in fact, it happened to someone who works on AI safety, an executive on AI safety. So this is a really good example of even experts, even people who that's their day-to-day, and they're thinking about this stuff. It happens to them. So that's how bad it is right now, right? This is bad. Okay, the last one, to give you all a chance to think about this. So an agent creates a religion, and other agents autonomously decide to start following that religion. Who thinks that could be true? Okay, some of you have been following the news. Correct. So yes and no, or I'm just going to say question mark here, because what happened is news reported that on Molbook, which you are probably familiar with, there was this robot that started a religion and others joined. Now, I don't know what the system prompt for this bot was or for this agent was. It could have been create a religion and see who follows you. I don't know that. I don't think reporters know that. So when you see news like this, it is always good to keep a skeptical mindset, because we really don't know if this was an emergent behavior or if this actually was programmed, right? So just wanted to put it out there. Now that we dived into this, we understand that the future is kind of here. This is not science fiction anymore. A year, even 6 months ago, some of these totally seemed like science fiction. We thought they were months, years away. Well, guess what? They're here. So this is not, we're talking about, this is happening now, not a hypothetical. And you heard the panel talk about the advantages of agentic, so I don't need to go through that in too much detail. In case someone just joined, essentially the hyper-productivity that these agents provide, both at a personal level but also in a business setting, where while I'm here, I can have agents coding up my ideas from last night, and by the time I'm done, I go and review these ideas and see which agent came up with something more useful, right? So this is impacting today executives, leaders, businesses, coders, obviously coders. If you're a coder, you know what I'm talking about. And so this is real. However, what happens with this? Well, agents are really good at following instructions. And right now, it's not so much that it's an AGI situation where there is general intelligence. It's really that they're reliable autonomy. And so you're going to rely on them following your instructions. What happens when your instructions are actually not right? And so that is one of the biggest sources of errors right now, where you basically either don't provide really good instructions, or your reasoning somehow is not complete, and the agent will just run with it and will do something that's not what you expect, as the examples that I shared earlier indicate. And so these are things that, when not governed properly, which is the default today, people are going very fast, they're not really thinking about governance, then the shadow of autonomy, as I call it, is what manifests here. So this ends up then leading to business and PR disasters that, I have too many to put on one slide, but if you have to read one or pay attention to one, I'd like you to look at the one where basically the Guardian reporting that consumers were using chatbots, and they were being misled when asked about tax information, financial, money information. They were given things as, you need to buy this travel insurance, and people don't know, right? So if the bot that has been being really good recommends them to buy travel insurance, they're probably going to do that. And the research that was done for this shows that it could be that up to 50% of British people got affected by this, right? So this is starting to get very serious and starting to affect people's spending and people's behavior, obviously. So I actually thought about how to map failure modes for agents. There's many ways you could do this. This is just one way that I wanted to present and share with you. We have, if we map out both the source of the error, whether it's a user or an agent, and then also the intent. Is it like just accidental, benign intent, or is it malicious intent? And so then we can look at these different quadrants and realize that even though a lot of the media and the sort of fear and this is focused on the emergent exploitation, the fourth quadrant, and when AI goes rogue, and of course that's worrisome, and we need to worry about that. But right now, what's the biggest problem that's impacting our economy, our agent-to-agent economy, it's quadrant 1, and it's task under specification, just maybe context creep. And so what happens when the prompt is not clear enough? What happens when you assume it has some context, but it has a different context and access to different set of tools you didn't know about? Then is when disaster ensues, right? So how do we prevent this, obviously? What we want to know is, I think we intuitively all know this is a disaster waiting to happen, and it has already happened. So how do we prevent it? And alignment in this context means coherence between the agent's instructions, what we all give the agent as instructions, the agent's actions, and the agent's outcome. If this chain breaks at any point, we got to be able to stop, because there is basically a fast agent that's not aligned. It is really not a tool. It's a liability. It's like a problem. So I'd like to introduce this 7-layered governance framework as a way of governing this space. It's not enough when you have billions of bots or agents acting. It's not enough to have one kill switch. That is not going to cut it. You kind of need a multi-dimensional approach to be targeting all these stages and to be really, it's like this, you can borrow this idea from cybersecurity, like you don't have just one layer, right? You have multiple layers that act on different aspects of this life cycle. And so you can see it here, and I want to show you kind of how it would be applied to the previous failure mode that I was presenting. So in the first quadrant, well, I'm not going to go through everything because we don't have that much time, but in the first quadrant, you can see that if you're entering a vague prompt, then there is a way to do instruction checking to make sure there is no, that you have specified what you need to specify. So there could be some dialogue that happens before the agent goes and starts to function autonomously. The real time guardrails here can also be applied to check for groundedness, to check for like any kinds of things that you need that you might not be able to access some database. So then you want to stop it right there. You don't want it to let the bot start trying to go into the database and trying to hack into it, because if it has a goal, it's going to try to do it whatever way it can. It doesn't have common sense or knows about ethical, right? Ethical principles. So you have to catch it early. And then always have the human expert supervising, so that at any point if something goes wrong, you can pass it to a human person. Like this whole idea that we are all going to be out of work, I mean, clearly some professions are being impacted more than others, but we are going to need to stay on top of this. As people, as humans, as experts, we cannot remove ourselves completely from this equation, or you can see what will happen, right? So we're still here, and we have a big role to play, which I guess I didn't have much time to. Actually, let me go back to this, because I want to talk about this for a second. So you're probably familiar with human-in-the-loop concept, where you have, this used to happen for LLMs world. Okay, now we're in the agentic space, where these agents, again, it could be billions of agents, millions of transactions per second. You cannot really have a human in the loop, because then you become a bottleneck. What you can do, though, is you can have an expert on the loop, and that's someone who really oversees the system and is not looking at each transaction as an individual transaction, but it's looking at how the system is working, detecting anomalies, and trying to really understand if there is some drift from the original behavior. And that's when we move from this like in the loop to on the loop as experts, not just as any person, but someone who understands the domain, understands what should happen and not happen. So hopefully that's clear. I didn't mention it earlier. And so in a nutshell, what I'm saying with all of these is that prioritizing safe and responsible agents and AI helps us shape the future not just for businesses, which of course also for businesses, but also for society as a whole. And in fact, this agentic economy is scaling, will scale. That is not the question. The question is, can we scale similarly fast and hopefully even before the trust layer underneath and the trust infrastructure so we can build this on top, so we can run as fast as possible? Because there's nothing worse than building a race car with no brakes. Clearly, we all want to have brakes so we can run fast. And the governance framework gives you those brakes and gives you the trust that now you can go as fast as you want, right? And at Alinea, that's kind of what we do. We build this trust and safety layer, and we enable regulatory guardrails for high-stake agents. In fact, we focus on the last 5 layers that I mentioned earlier. So from data protection to putting the human on the loop, the human expert on the loop, guardrails and real-time monitoring. Just to give you one more view, we have a platform that has the red teaming module, and that is providing adversarial testing to companies that want to really find all the vulnerabilities before someone else does that in production. Runtime guardrails we spoke about a little bit, and it's basically a way to filter input and outputs and make sure it adheres to regulations and to your principles and to your policies as a company. And then last but not least, you want to have this ongoing monitoring. They were talking about this, right? It's not enough to evaluate once or to test things once. You got to have this ongoing evaluation and monitoring that really makes sure you're adhering to whatever the instructions were, whatever the policies and regulations are, and that it does that in a way that human experts can interpret and auditors can actually look at as well, because there is a regulatory part of this. So today I really spent a lot of time talking about the technical and applied things, but I think before I close, I want to make sure I'm not forgetting a very important dimension, which is the ethical dimension. So we all here, as users, but also as leaders, as creators, have a choice to determine how we want to use this technology and whether this technology will actually entrench inequality or unleash inclusive productivity, which is what I'm hoping. So for me, I'm interested in building an economy where agents help us and work for us safely. How about you? I hope you do too. That's it.